This is Mystery Babylon Unveiled, Lucifer the Queen of Heaven, Chapter 17, Wise as Serpents, Harmless as Doves. The two pillars on either side of the door of the temple represent two opposites. These pillars are represented by various symbols all around us. Jesus Christ is the door to the kingdom of heaven and to eternal life. He stands between the two olive trees. He said himself in John 3:19, I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out and find pasture. When Samson was placed between the two pillars, he brought the two opposites, the roof and the floor, together, and by his sacrifice he destroyed his enemies above and below. In the same way, when Jesus Christ was crucified between two thieves, he brought the kingdom of darkness down. As he said in John 12 verse 32, If I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me. And in John 12:31 he said, Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast out. Unlike with Lucifer, however, there is no duality with Jesus Christ. 1 John 1:5 says, This then is the message which we have heard of him, and declare unto you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. Lucifer identifies herself as the whore and the Holy One. The goddess is full of duality. She is the morning and evening star, light and darkness. As the diva, Meredith Brooks sang in her song titled Bitch, I am a child, I am a mother, I am a sinner, I am a saint, I do not feel ashamed. As both the dove and the serpent are animals sacred to the goddess, she is both a devil and an angel of light, knowledge of good and evil. This is the Masonic checkerboard floor, opposites that must be embraced as being part of one whole. I learned of the place that the goddess held between the two pillars simply by observing the symbols that I was constantly being shown in artwork and in music videos. In the secret teaching of all ages, Manly P. Hall confirms what I was able to discover by the grace of the Most High. The World Virgin is sometimes shown standing between two great pillars, the Jachin and Boaz of Freemasonry, symbolizing the fact that nature attains productivity by means of polarity. As wisdom personified, Isis stands between the pillars of opposites, demonstrating that understanding is always found at the point of equilibrium and that truth is often crucified between the two thieves of apparent contradiction. Page 130. The two pillars are bridged by the goddess, the above and the below, the spirit and the material. Lucifer is the mystery religion's Jacob ladder, bridging the gap between heaven and earth. For those who believe in a Trinity, Mary has become the third person in that Trinity, becoming like the Most High, in accordance with Lucifer's I will statements in Isaiah 14. In this image we see the coronation of the Virgin, or the crowning, by Diego Velázquez from 1635 and 1636 is when he worked on it. And we have the goddess in line with the dove, another symbol of the goddess, between the two pillars. In much of the art she's in, there is a direct line between Mary and the dove. They are one and the same. Remember that the dove is a goddess symbol. Those pillars on either side of Mary can be angels, candlesticks, or even two men who are supposed to represent God the Son and God the Father. Each pillar represents the number 1. The 0 is the doorway, the yoni. The number 101 is typically used to signify something that is basic or introductory. It is the point of initiation. Caitlin Matthews, author of Sophia, Goddess of Wisdom, Bride of God, comments on the goddess identifying as a holy whore. Sophia also appears in the surprising guise of a harlot. This theme is traceable from the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, in which the divine barmaid of the gods, Siduri, consoles Gilgamesh and a mortal Hierodule initiates Enkidu into manhood. Right through to the medieval conflation of the Magdalene with the woman taken in adultery, this image of the harlot is perfectly reasonable in the context of gnosis, for she is a woman of initiatory knowledge. It is I who am the harlot and the holy, says the thunder, perfect voice of Sophia. The images of the whore and the Holy One are blended in gnosis, as they are throughout biblical tradition. Page 162. In their book, Jesus and the Lost Goddess, Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy touch on how the duality of Sophia manifests. In the Gospels, the Virgin Mary and Mary Magdalene represent the higher Sophia and the fallen Sophia. They are called by the same name to emphasize the fact that mythologically they are aspects of the same figure. As in the Sophia myth, the first Mary is a virgin, like Sophia when she was living with her father, and the second is a prostitute who is redeemed by her lover Jesus, like Sophia when lost in the world. Page 95. Here we have an image. The caption is God is Wild, from the film God is Wild by Tommy Genesis, and it is by, I'm sorry I'm not familiar with the Roman numerals, but it's Downtown Records. This point is illustrated in the short film God is Wild by Tommy Genesis, as the diva in the video stands between the two pillars, showing both demonic and angelic traits. She is the bridge between both worlds. On her waist is a key representing wisdom, which resembles the sign for female, Venus, or for the womb. Perhaps Sophia even bridges the gap between female and male. This is what we typically think of when the Baphomet is mentioned. One thing that needs to be said when discussing Baphomet is the fact that the famous image of the hermaphroditic Baphomet that was drawn by the French occultist Eliphas Levi wasn't drawn until 500 years after the Templar order had been dissolved. It is very unlikely that Levi's drawing of the Baphomet had anything to do with the Baphomet that the Templars were accused of worshipping. And here is that image of the Baphomet drawn by Eliphas Levi. It was drawn in 1861, and I will continue to read so that I don't delay too much with commentary. The inspiration for the famous drawing of the goat-headed figure is most assuredly the Bible. Levi's drawing of Baphomet appears to incorporate everything that Yahweh told the Israelites to avoid making a graven image of or worshiping. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, scrolling down, Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flies in the air, the likeness of any thing that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth, and lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, Even all the host of heaven should be driven to worship them and serve them. Deuteronomy 4, verse 15 through 19. This drawing might not have anything to do with the original Baphomet at all, which at the time was believed to be the head of a bearded man. But as Alan Butler says in The Goddess, the Grail, and the Lodge, this head may also have related John the Baptist, for whom the Templars had special reverence. Even more likely is the suggestion that the bearded head could have represented the Green Man. Effigies of the Green Man are to be seen in many Gothic churches and cathedrals. Few historians now doubt that the Green Man is a hangover from the days of nature worship and, in particular, worship of the goddess. Page 222. Scrolling down. The Templars' reverence for John the Baptist is likely due to his similarity to the Green Man, a god of nature. John dwelled in the wilderness, wearing camel hair and eating locusts and wild honey. John the Baptist was beheaded, and the Green Man is typically depicted as a head with no body. It's not hard to see how the Templars made the connection. Alan Butler reveals what the truth about the Baphomet is when the name is put through a substitution cipher as first discovered by the British Bible scholar Dr. Hugh Schonfield. In all probability, the name Baphomet had nothing to do with the mysterious bearded head of the Templars, and the confusion may have been due to the ineptitude on the part of Philip IV's interrogators. However, the word was still of a tremendous importance to the Templars, because once it has gone through the mill of the Atbash cipher, Baphomet comes out as Sophia. That is on page 222 through and 223. Scrolling down. The image of Baphomet drawn by Eliphaz Levi was evidently his own creation, using Deuteronomy 4, verse 15 through 19 as his inspiration. I can't rule out that he did know that Baphomet was a code word for Sophia, or wisdom, somehow, but the revelation of the true meaning of Baphomet makes so much more sense because the Templars were famously Marianists, as Alan Butler explains. The Templars were dedicated to the Virgin Mary, for whom they showed what amounted to an obsession. This had also been true of their founder, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. Bernard had deliberately manipulated the Catholic Church of his day to virtually deify Mary. The Templar order was accused of worshipping Baphomet, which we know is a code word and which really means Sophia. Sophia, in turn, is early Christian speak for the Holy Spirit, often represented as a dove. The dove has represented the goddess for thousands of years. It seems, next page, more and more likely that the true religious imperatives of the Templars meant that, in 14th century Christian terms, they were guilty as charged. Page 223. The Queen of Heaven, Baphomet, was the goddess that the Templars worshipped in the form of the two Marys of Duality, Mary, the Virgin Mother of Jesus, and Mary Magdalene, out of whom Jesus Christ cast 7 devils. Sophia was the Holy Grail. It wasn't an actual cup. The Grail is a reference to the womb. This image here is titled, I gotta zoom out one more time. That was a little bit too small. Okay. The Damsel of the Saint Grail, or the Damsel of the Holy Grail, by Dante Gabriel Rossetti, 1874. The Ankh symbol, the chalice or grail, symbolizes the source of life. And being that the tomb is the womb of Mother Earth, these symbols also represent spiritual rebirth, or literal death and resurrection. The Holy Grail in the Catholic ceremonies represents the womb of the Virgin Mary. It's not likely a confession that any priest will make, but as observers we can clearly see with our own eyes that Mary holds a place in the Trinity next to God and His Son. In the very detailed book, Freemasonry, Rituals, Symbols, and History of the Secret Society, Mark Stavish explains what Mary represents in the minds of Freemasons, comparing her to geometry. Going down. It is interesting to note that when the building phase occurred, many, if not all, the great cathedrals, and to a fair extent the smaller ones as well, were dedicated to Our Lady, or the Virgin Mary, the Mother of Jesus Christ. Herein we see the material world giving birth or expression to divine ideals, taking them from the abstract and making them tangible, concrete, living. Page 88. It is through Mary that the Word is made flesh, and through geometry the ideal becomes form. The lost word that each Master Mason seeks is the power of creation itself. Mary is the wisdom seat, the foundation of all creation in the medieval mind, and the Word is her offspring. The power of creation is found in wisdom. Page 105. Here we have an image of the chalice or Holy Grail inside of a sacred feminine diamond. As Marx said, geometry is personified by a goddess. Through geometry, ideas can be given form in the material world. Goddesses personify a lot of concepts in Freemasonry. It underlines the point that the divine feminine, or Lucifer, is the source of enlightenment. Knowing that geometry is a spirit in Freemasonry, I believe it's fitting to put a capital G on the word to emphasize that and help us to remember it. In a dictionary of Freemasonry, Robert McCoy explains the connection of the letter G to geometry and how important it is. He gives us good reasons to believe that the letter G truly does stand for geometry. The letter G is deservedly regarded as one of the most sacred Masonic emblems. This symbol proves that Freemasonry always prosecuted its labors with reference to the grand ideas of infinity and eternity by the letter G, which conveyed to the minds of the brethren at the time the idea of God and that of geometry. It bound heaven to the earth, the divine to the human, the infinite to the finite. Page 152. The letter G cannot allude to the name of God alone in the German lodges, or else it could not be found in the situation in foreign lodges. It has a closer affinity to geometry, which is so necessary to an architect, and geometrical certainty and truth is everywhere necessary. 519 on page 519. Among the mathematical sciences, geometry is the one which has the most especial reference to architecture, and we can, therefore, under the name of geometry, understand the whole art of Freemasonry. In Anderson's Book of Constitutions, Freemasonry is frequently called geometry, and of the latter he saith that the whole being of the order is comprehended in it. Freemasons therefore ought to make themselves intimately acquainted with geometry. It is not absolutely necessary to be able to delineate geometrical figures, but it is necessary to be able to deduce all our actions, works, or resolutions from geometrical principles. Page 519 and 520. Scrolling down. As McCoy said, The letter G represents something that bounds heaven to earth. Mark Stavish said that something was geometry. I said that it was the goddess who stands between the two pillars of opposites. Stavish expounds on geometry and also introduces us to the genius of Freemasonry. We often hear of the genius of Freemasonry referred to as she and discussed in anthropomorphic terms, expressing human qualities but on a perfected or archetypal level. This symbol then takes on a deeper connection to both a literal spiritual force protecting Freemasonry and the Gnostic notions of the divine Sophia, or wisdom, the bride of God. Page 75 and 76. So just to reiterate, he said that there is a literal spiritual force protecting Freemasonry. Manly P. Hall also said that there was a great spirit that guided Freemasonry, and he said that Isis was the mother of the mysteries. That would make Isis a name for the genius of Freemasonry too. Mark Stavish called this spirit that protected Freemasonry the divine Sophia. He also says of her, the genius of Freemasonry is the guiding spirit of Freemasonry, and every Mason who seeks to understand its mysteries. Page 89. What we have here, two images. One from the General Manual of Freemasonry on the left, 1883, and the other, the Masonic Esotericism, first third of the 19th century on the right. Okay, scrolling down. The genius of Freemasonry is the wisdom goddess that goes by many names: Sophia, Athena, Shekinah, Shakti, and Isis, to name some. Here is an illustration of the blazing star with the letter G on it. Stavish agrees with McCoy in the following quote, that the Masonic G represents geometry. The G stands for geometry, the most critical field of learning for any educated person, particularly one who would be in the building trades. Page 84. Now Mark reveals that geometry too is essentially the goddess of Freemasonry. Like geometry and wisdom in the form of Sophia before it, the tendency to turn abstract forces and ideals into anthropomorphic images, particularly of a feminine form, suggests pre-Christian sources in classical paganism. One woodcut shows geometry personified as a beautiful woman, complete with the letter G and surrounded by the working tools of the building trade. Page 89. The G is the woman that we see in Masonic art, often weeping over the broken pillar. Whether she is called wisdom, geometry, or the genius of Freemasonry, it's the same goddess, represented by the blazing star, the pentagram. She is Mystery Babylon. While I may not be convinced of what McCoy and Stavish says about the meaning of G being geometry, I don't think they're wrong either. The G is indeed surrounded by the tools that are used to measure the material world. I'm inclined to believe that the G stands for Gaia, the personification of the earth. Gaia is a universally understood name, a universally recognized name that encompasses all the names of other goddesses, including the goddess which personifies geometry, which means measurement of the earth, measurement of earth. Here is an image of the Masonic Register, symbolic history of F and AM from 1876. In this image, we of course see Isis, the woman, weeping over the broken pillar as Father Time braids her hair, or Death braids her hair. Remember, her steps go down to death. As the world soul, or anima mundi, Gaia is the expression of the force in the material world. She is the face of God, or presence of God. As the bridge between worlds, she is the G between the compass and square. In the sacred feminine diamond, the G is sometimes replaced by a 5-pointed star. So the Masonic square and compass on the left, and the anima mundi, or the world soul, on the right. On Masonic tracing boards, you will notice Jacob's ladder, or a stairway to heaven, and typically the triple goddesses are on that ladder. Scroll down to see. First degree tracing board by Josiah Bowring, 1819. This is merely a cropped image, or a zoomed in and cropped image of that Masonic tracing board. But note the things that you will see in this image. One of the women is the Virgin, one of them is the Mother, and one is the old woman, Fate or Fortuna. One has a book on her lap where a child would sit. That book represents the Word. The Word is her seed. Her reading a book could also show that she is wisdom. The key, a symbol for wisdom, is tied to the ladder. The Virgin is holding an anchor to show that she cannot be moved. She is bound to the ladder, just as the anima mundi is chained between heaven and earth. These goddesses that are venerated in Freemasonry have also been represented in various fairy tales. Beauty, or Belle, and the story Beauty and the Beast is symbolic of Freemasonry, or the mysteries. She's the goddess of Freemasonry who raises man, who is in his lowest beastly estate, to a higher evolved form. As the rough cut stone becomes the smooth and defined cube on the Masonic tracing board, Beauty changes the beast into a man. Her love for books also identifies her as a wisdom goddess. I'm going to scroll down here. And the rose is present as a symbol of Venus in the mysteries. Zoom out a little bit. So this is Beauty from Beaumont's Beauty and the Beast, 1756. Okay, I'm having trouble zooming to the right ratio now, but okay. Next page. As with Beauty, I've noticed that some other names from fairy tales are code words for Lucifer, such as Alice from Alice in Wonderland. The journey down the rabbit hole is used as a metaphor for initiation into the mysteries. The rabbit from the story is a sacred animal and fertility symbol long associated with Ishtar. Alice, having made her journey into the mysteries and confronted the passionate Scarlet Queen in her own heart, emerges as a wisdom goddess. The Wicked Witch, or Old Crone, in stories such as Snow White, is the goddess of fate called Fortuna. She is winter and death battling the young and fertile queen of the earth. Also called Lady Luck or Lady Lux. In Destiny, she is there at the end of the ladder, the end of life, on the Masonic tracing board. In Ancient Mirrors of Womanhood, Merlin Stone sheds some light on other identities of Lady Luck. Celtic memories of the great Queen Morgan also lingered in the Italian lands, where tales were once told of Fata Morgana, who lived beneath the waters of a lake. But Boiardo wrote that the powerful Fata Morgana was but another name for the holy goddess Fortuna. She whose shrines once graced Etruscan towns, where omens of the future bubbled forth from underground springs. And there are those who say that Fata and Fortuna were but other names for the three who were known as the Fates. Page 61. As the moon and serpent represent death and rebirth, so does the goddess. Dion Fortune, author of the mystical Kabbalah, explains the duality assigned to the third Sephirah in Kabbalah called Binah. The Great Mother aspect and the Saturn aspect, for both these attributions are given to Binah. She is the mighty mother of all living, and she is also the death principle, for the giver of life and form is also the giver of death. For form must die when its use is outworn. Upon the planes for form, death and birth are two sides of the same coin. The mother aspect of Binah finds expression in the title Mara, the sea, which is given to her. It is a curious fact that Venus Aphrodite is represented as being born from the sea foam, and the Virgin Mary is called by Catholics Stella Maris, or Star of the Sea. The word Mara, which is the root of Mary, also means bitter, and the spiritual experience attributed to Binah is the vision of sorrow, a vision which calls to mind the picture of the Virgin weeping at the foot of the cross, her heart pierced by 7 swords. Page 144. As Dion Fortune said, she is the mighty mother of all living. She is also the death principle. The tomb is the womb of Mother Earth. Rebirth is a focal point in the mysteries, because initiates understand the axiom, as the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 15:36, that which thou sowest is not quickened except it die. Indeed, it was by one man's sin, Adam's sin, that death came into the world. But the woman, who was called Eve because she was the mother of all living, was the giver of death. And here we have here in this image the goddess and her serpent in Eden. Public domain, artist unknown. And Eve is persuading Adam in the background to eat of the forbidden fruit. And I'm not sure how well you can see these images. They're pretty old. And you have the goddess here, her serpent there with the fruit in its mouth. So that was chapter 17. The next chapter is chapter 18. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. Mystery Babylon Unveiled. Lucifer, the Queen of Heaven, brings to light Bible scriptures which prove that the one known as Satan, the devil, and Lucifer is in fact a woman. It reveals how she is identified in the Bible as the Queen of Heaven and the great whore of Babylon. This book also brings forth incontrovertible historic evidence confirming that Lucifer was worshipped in the earliest recorded history as the Great Mother Goddess, and that she is still worshipped as such within the halls of secret societies today. Discover where the world's worship of the goddess began and where it is hidden within the pages of this book. Mystery Babylon Unveiled, Lucifer the Queen of Heaven is available in paperback and ebook at all online sellers. If your local bookstore or library doesn't carry this book, please request it. By doing so, you will help get the book onto more shelves. Mystery Babylon Unveiled, Lucifer the Queen of Heaven contains essential knowledge that all Christians should take hold of. It is an insightful and profound revealing of one of the greatest mysteries in the world.